crave power look back over the mistakes of their lives, pile them all together, and call it destiny. This week, Rob and I will be covering the surprisingly dark 1987 toy line tie-in for Masters of the Universe, the first movie I ever saw at the cinema, and one I'm still strangely conflicted about. And as that quote proves to a certain extent, a tonally interesting film, I think it's fair to say.
You're right, it's dark. It's like they've taken the darkest bits of the Filmation TV show, the toy line, and they've played with it, or they've taken it further because they thought that was what would be the perfect film. But they've kind of lost, even though it's set in space, it comes to Earth, you've got a key that opens if you play the right music, things like that. It seems to have lost all its fantastical elements, though, like a lot of the fantastical elements.
It does have fantastical elements, I think, but it's much as much as a film about kind of, Eternia and He-Man and stuff can be. It is relatively grounded. And the weird thing is, when I was watching it, the thing that kept coming to me was like, this doesn't feel like a toy line tie-in. It doesn't even necessarily feel like a Masters of the Universe film. What it felt like to me was like an amalgamation of all the 80s films and all the tropes the kind of, you think about the films we've covered over the past 30 odd weeks kind of thing. I mean, it takes all the blockbuster conventions for the 80s. It even has like that 50s small town vibe that is so prevalent throughout all of these, like, you think Gremlins, Monster Squad, they keep coming up. They throw that in, but it was like, I started ticking things off. It's like right from the start, they've got like the classic John Williams score that evokes Superman, both in terms of its style and the visual. When the credits are coming down, looks totally Superman. And by the way, the main theme for this film is absolutely fantastic.
I love it. I had that written down, yeah.
Oh, I love it. There's obviously there's so many nods to Star Wars. Other elements of the score actually nod Star Wars directly. There's the Stormtroopers. I mean, they're just Stormtroopers in black. Let's not fuck around here. Yep. The Bounty Hunters, totally Empire Strikes Back. I mean, even Gwildor's like a budget Yoda. These aren't subtle nods. The Cosmic Key, very much with that bum, 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 is totally Close Encounters. Absolutely. Like, it has like that Amblin style of filmmaking as well. It takes from the fantasy genre from the 80s. I mean, Gwildor kind of nods to Willow, Labyrinth. There's even a bit of Time Bandits, right down to the bit when they come through the Cosmic Key Gate, whatever you want to call it. They kind of fly out. It feels like a direct nod to Time Bandits. I'm not sure if it's intentional or if they're just like, we are literally going to rip off every movie from the 80s.
I mean, because Predator's cousin is in this for a start?
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, when I was watching it, one of the things I thought was, the aesthetic, especially of the throne room, reminded me a lot of David Lynch's Dune. Yeah. And when I was doing the research, bizarrely, it's not quite a direct link, but the production art for this film was done by sci-fi comics legend Mobius. I can't say I know much about him, but suppose he is a sci-fi comics legend. And he storyboarded the entirety for Alejandro Jodorowsky's unmade take on Dune. So he storyboarded that entire film and then did this. And I was just like, there's definitely Dune vibes to this film. You think of like the opening battle, that like little hint we get of Eternia, because most of Eternia in this film, let's be honest, is a throne room and a matte painting. And is that it? I think it is, right?
Looks like, yeah.
And the last thing I've got down, and I won't, well, there's two things. I mean, He-Man in this film is basically just, he's got the hair of Gibson, the body of Stallone, and the accent of Schwarzenegger. He's like all those movie stars wrapped into one. And just to kind of put the cherry on top of the cake, they get James Tolkien in, who is the most 80s actor possibly of all time. So I like, that was the thing. I kept watching. It's like, yeah, there's hints to this being a He-Man film, the fact that He-Man's in it. But I was like, this just feels like a movie of the 80s to the nth degree to me.
And we said it last week on Total Recall when we did the podcast with Dave, that for the remake, you take the name away, and it can be an all right film. Like, you don't need to call him He-Man, and you don't need to call this Masters of the Universe, and it wouldn't be a He-Man film. It wouldn't be a Masters of the Universe film, because there's nothing. Well, you don't have King Randor, Queen Marina, Adam, Orko, Battle Cat. Nothing that you remember.
No sweet Cringer. But again, how much of that was, I know some of it was in the script, the original script, but so many of the design choices of this film, like Orko was supposed to be in initially, but so much of it comes back to, well, there's the technology of the time, but like you already mentioned, the cost.
Yeah,
which we'll get to, obviously. That's going to be part of this conversation for sure.
We kind of bypassed my original comment, and I want to go back to it. Predator's cousin. One of the bounty hunters. Oh my God, they stole just basically the Predator design. pretty much.
Was that for what's his name? Which one? Saurod, the kind of the frog one.
Well, because he kind of had the Predator design, but he also had a bit of Guyver. When he breathes out of his he releases the gas out of his mouth, or the weird vents.
That was a weird one, because I actually thought, because they did the lineup and I was like, man, this is fucking totally Empire Strikes Back. This is legit just stolen like wholesale. But you look at the monsters and only one of them's from the cartoon. Beastman's the only one who people, fans of He-Man would have known. Everyone else played Man.
They've dumbed down like fuck as well. Beastman in this. Yeah, Beastman. Yeah, he doesn't talk, because if I remember from the TV show, he was a conniving, just a manipulative guy who was always trying to screw over Skeletor. And in this one, he was nothing more than just a beast.
Well, he doesn't say it, but again, it's one of those things. In the original script, Beastman was supposed to talk. And when they cut, Beastman just became a beast man. Like, he's just the muscle. He doesn't say anything. I mean, he kind of, the closest he comes is kind of scrounging, or I don't know, groveling, I suppose is the right word, to Skeletor, but he doesn't actually say a single thing. I actually think some of the design's great. I think Beastman looks great. I think he looks threatening. I think if you were going to take Beastman from the page and put him on screen, and you can say that about a lot of characters in this film, like, he looks the part. It's a shame they couldn't get like Trapjaw in and a few of the others. And they were obviously thinking toy lines, as so many the case. Like, the more new characters we get, the more new toys we've got. And I guess they were thinking if this was a big hit, they could have synergy with the comic books and the cartoons and stuff and bring those characters across. But I mean, despite the fact it doesn't talk, design-wise, Beastman looks great. I was amazed that Frog Dude Saurod got killed off so early, because, like you said, he was the coolest design of all.
Yeah.
And he just didn't get much to do. I was like with the neck thing, I was like, it looks like they spent serious money on him, and he was dead by 30 minutes in? I was like, dude, you killed Saurod? What the fuck?
Killed by Skeletor as well. Not even killed in battle or anything. Just in the lineup, Skeletor just takes him out.
Yeah, well, I guess part of that was that Mattel had a kind of deal in place with Canon, saying, listen, you can make a He-Man film, Master of the Universe, but He-Man's not allowed to kill anyone. Like, that was one of the rules. And you notice in the film, He-Man never kills anyone. One of the reasons that the stormtroopers are actually passed off as being robots.
That's the thing, because they hinted at being robots, even though they move like, I was going to say humans, Eternians, whatever they move like. They're actually meant to be robotic.
Yeah. And I think that is a large part of that. I'm not sure what came first, chicken and the egg style, whatever. But I suspect a large part of that was just that remit saying, listen, He-Man can't kill anyone, but he can beat the shit out of robots, which is absolutely fine. But to come back to that point, is like, why did they kill off Saurod and leave Karg, the fucking half-bat 80s rock star fucking dude? Like, he was the worst. And he like, okay, fair play. He had a hook for a hand. That was pretty fucking sweet. But other than that, man, I was like, I don't think anyone would have been upset if Karg had got killed off almost immediately.
He was such a groveling little shit as well in this film. Like, even the way he speaks. Yeah, his design, he looks like a bit like Nosferatu, facial. And it's just, it is ridiculous.
It could have been cool. Like, if you're absolutely right with the face. Like, rather than going for like the classic handsome, Dracula style thing, they've gone for the literal, instead of Batman, the man-bat style thing. But that works if you make him tall, imposing, scary. But instead, you give him that giant bouffant haircut. He appears to be about, 5'6", and he's a groveling little shit. So he doesn't have any threat. Even the claw hand doesn't help. You just, like, when you see the claw hand, you don't think, he lost that in battle. You're like, he probably lost that in kind of, woodshop class. It was just an accident and he lost his hand, something shit like that. I was just like, of all, like, considering General Blade was so cool, who was the other one I said? Saurod, or whatever his name is. Like, they were all, and Beastman, you almost think, why not give Beastman more lines, like you said, because his character design was so cool. I was like, he looks the part to fight, He-Man on a physical level. Give him the lines as well. Don't give him to weird little bat dude. He sucked. He was one of the few things in this film, like, going back to it, that I genuinely disliked, because if not clear already, this film, while not great, like, I still enjoy it. I've got nostalgia attached to it because it was the first film I ever saw in the cinema, but I think there's stuff to like in this film. And the main thing I took out of it when I rewatched it was just like what could have been. Like that was the disappointment, because obviously they had like a 17 million budget. They really wanted to make it cheap. They basically hedged their bets because I think, and apologies if I'm stepping on facts here, but Canon and another company who made it, whose name, Golden Globus, which is a terrible name for a company, they wanted to make a Spider-Man film. And they were like, all right, that's going to cost a lot of money. So they're like, well, what we'll do is we'll make a He-Man film and we'll make a Superman film, and we'll take the money we make off both.
No, you said Superman, you meant Spider-Man, man.
No. Like, they wanted to make Spider-Man,
yeah.
But to make Spider-Man, they're like, we need more money. So they're like, what we're going to do, we're going to make a He-Man film, and we're going to make Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. And they were going on the assumption that both of these were going to be home run hits, and they were going to take the money they made from those two films and then make Spider-Man. But of course, Superman 4 was a piece of shit and bombed, and this totally bombed as well. If anything, it didn't just bomb as a movie. Like, for a long time, it kind of killed He-Man off as like, this was the biggest toy line in the world. And a year after this, it really wasn't anymore.
Well, even to the fact that when they brought it back as a cartoon, they set it like years and years and years in the future again with different, with He-Man battling different villains and things like that, with spaceships and things. But going back to that, because you've already said it, they did then actually build sets for Masters of the Universe 2 and for, because we've already said it, we might as well cover it for now instead of waiting until facts. And for Spider-Man, they had scripts, they had sets, because I can't remember his name. Alec, what was his name? I'll cover it better in facts, but it was going to be directed back to back. Masters of the Universe, Spider-Man were both going to be directed back to back. But Canon went bust.
Yeah.
And in order then to recoup some cost, basically then the sets and some of the script and things were then turned into the 1989 classic Cyborg with
which is insane, right?
Yeah,
which, I mean, classic. I mean, that you're using that term very loosely.
You mean with his and I bet you can't guess where they got the idea for his name from, Van Damme, Gibson Rickenbacker.
It's a hell of a name, isn't it? Yeah. Jesus Christ.
I mean, in all fairness, going back to this film, it's still quite stylish, and a lot of it does hold up well, like the laser battles taken straight out of Star Wars, as we already know, with the different colored laser depending on what side you're on.
Yeah.
They do hold up quite well. It kind of gets a bit suspect when Superman's flying, but we'll get to that in not Superman, sorry, Spider. Fucking hell, He-Man.
Yeah. Goes on the kind of like flying shield thing. Yeah,
one of the men is flying. He-Man, Spider-Man, Superman. One of the men. Is flying.
A man is flying. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
But it all does hold up quite well. But you can definitely tell the lack of budget, because it is not so much a bottle film, bottle episode, bottle film, where it's all in one location. But it kind of feels like that.
It's not far off.
No, that's what I mean, you've got, as you've already said, Eternia is basically a painting of Castle Greyskull, a throne room, and just outside Gwildo's house.
Yeah. So that's basically somewhere outdoors. That's about it.
So that's all their Eternia is. And then it all goes down to small town America. And I love the fascination that they had with, and even though I'm going to say that it's happened a couple of times in films, especially during the 80s, no, I can't think of one right now, but where they take the big fantastical film and then it ends up in a small town. You've got all this big, and the storyline and the IP, the intellectual property and all, it's ever expanding. But then it all happens in this one small town. Again, where there are not many people. Because when fucking Skeletor's army comes out, you think people would be going, what's going on?
Yeah, well, that was the thing. I mean, right from the off, when He-Man shows up, and by modern day standards or 80 standards, whatever, we're talking about small town, probably relatively conservative American suburbia. And He-Man is running around dressed like a sex pest. He's in those tiny little underwear, a cape. You're asking some serious questions if this dude's running around in the dark. Nobody says a thing. Fair enough. I'll just put it down to it's dark. Maybe it's October, trick or treat, whatever. But when Skeletor shows up in his barge ship, in his parade of shock troopers, nobody calls the police. No. Like, there's never any aware, like you say, it's so kind of low key. You never really see beyond the core characters of the film. And I think after the shootout in Charlie's keyboard store, fucking so 80s, Lubick shows up with like 4 or 5 police officers to say, "Oh, dude, it was like the end of the world here," and he's like, "Yeah, whatever, Lubick, you crazy bastard." Like, no one else heard them. Like this is a small town.
Yeah.
Not only did they shoot the shit out of it with lasers, but again, they showed up on a giant floating barge with a man with no face, and everyone's just like, "I didn't see anything. I was sleeping. I was resting. I was watching Countdown."
That's what I wanted to say. You said nobody called the police. An actual policeman called the police, and nobody believed him.
Yeah, I mean, there are stretches, but again, I think, and I know the original script definitely had more of a turn. I think the plan was always to come to Earth to kind of ground it to a certain extent, but you cannot escape the budget constraints. Like, they spent it all on the throne room. Like, they knocked down 2 existing sets, and the set for the Castle Greyskull throne room at the time, and I think it was for the next 30 years, was the largest set ever made for a movie, which is absolutely insane.
It was reused a few times in some of the Star Treks. I think I've got that in fact. So they've
I think originally it was. Yeah. I think it was like part of the set from Ghostbusters and another famous film. But they even used miniatures from like Blade Runner, I think. And again, I think Ghostbusters was another one. But yeah, that throne room, like, you see it and you can see why they kept going back to it, because it was visually impressive. Like, I love the aesthetic of it. I love the fact, like, again, the dialogue doesn't really do it justice, because they've got like the different, you see all the statues around the side, and some of them kind of represent, good, like your traditional heroes. And then further down, you have like, I guess you'd call them monsters, but like, it was all about the duality of Greyskull and what it has the potential to be. It's not like Greyskull is good by default. Like, I guess the narrative, depending on who is in power at the time, Greyskull can be a force for good, or it can be a force for evil. That's what's called Castle Greyskull, I suppose. It's not like Castle Happy Place, or, okay.
That's good, because you've got Castle Greyskull, and then you've got Snake Mountain, that they never actually mentioned, because you would have loved to have seen a live-action Snake Mountain. I
think they reference it once.
Gwildor says it twice, I think.
Yeah. No, he says about he would never knowingly serve the Lord of Snake Mountain.
And he said then, if I knew that I was working for Snake Mountain, he does say it twice, which is the only reference to that. What I wanted to say, you can say what you want about this film. You can say what you want about the budget and anything else. Frank Langella as Skeletor loves it.
Oh yeah, I mean,
he's having a great time. I mean, he's enjoying it so much, and you can tell. I mean, all right, he's got the Skeletor makeup on, but there's got to be a beam across his face whilst because he loves delivering the lines. He loves just everything about it. He is having so much fun with this role.
Well, it's kind of like, put it this way, I went to Aberystwyth a couple of weeks ago with my friends for a long weekend. Yeah,
really, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, well, we went into a student nightclub after we were all off our tits. So we're all 39, and suddenly we find ourselves not only in a nightclub, which we have no business in, but we're in a student nightclub, And then all of a sudden, what you've got to do in that position is make a decision. Like, 2 of my friends, they saw it because it was so busy. I mean, it was asking for COVID affairs, but they were like, all right, you either turn around and you walk the fuck out, or you get on the dance floor and you start throwing some shapes. Because what you can't be is the guy on the side who's 39 years old just looking at the dance floor. You don't want to be that guy. So you either walk out or you get on the dance floor and tear it up. You don't belong to be like, well, while I'm here, I'm going to have as much fun as possible. And that's how I feel about Frank Langella. He doesn't belong in this film. He's too good an actor. And it's like, he's shown up, he's seen what's going on. He's like, for fuck's sake, they put the makeup on him. He's like, Jesus Christ, what have I signed up for? And he's decided, he's like, I can't phone it in. There's nothing. We've talked about Bruce Willis before, being in bad films, but knowing he's too good for it and being a half-assed performance. It's horrible to see. Either you don't do it, or you go fucking Frank Langella style. You get up there and you act like goddamn Skeletor. Right, because he's like, fuck it, I'm here and I am going to dance my ass off. That's what he does.
2 things, right? I wondered where the fuck you were going to link Frank Langella to Aberystwyth. Like,
it worked, right?
I mean, I strapped myself in for this ride that we were taking, but I wondered where the fuck we were going. Right? Secondly, it's all kind of a moot point anyway, or moo point if you want to mention Joey. It's all kind of a moot point because he knew exactly what he was signing up for, and he signed up because he was playing Skeletor. He loved it from day one. It wasn't the fact that he walked into an Aberystwyth student nightclub and went, fuck you, carry on going.
I appreciate...
I fucking love that.
I appreciate. I was kind of building my own narrative there. But you know what I mean. Fundamentally, whether he wants to or not, Frank Langella doesn't really belong in this film because he's too good an actor. But fair play to him. Like you said, he shows up and he's like, I'm going all in on this. Yeah. I'm going to be Skeletor as fuck. Well, right down to the giant gold outfit, man. He absolutely kills it.
And we will mention the Power Ranger villain when we get a bit closer to the end because he was pulled straight out of fucking Power Rangers. But
no, it totally was.
He's having so much fun doing it. He loves it. It's absolutely.
I love his quotes. Like everything. Like he almost spits his lines out. You will kneel. Like everything. Like I think he even like throws in like some Shakespearean lines. I'm not sure if that's the script or he insisted. But yeah, he's totally going for it. And what it reminded me of, because when I was going into this, again, I haven't seen it for a few years. I was like, God, it's not really a Masters of the Universe film. Is it really a film about Courtney Cox's dead parents? Maybe. But then you rewatch it, and what this film really is, more than anything else, is a film about Skeletor. It reminded me of the same, like if 1989 Batman. Yeah, it's called Batman, but it's not a Batman film. It's a Joker film.
Yeah.
Like they could have just as easily called this film Skeletor. Because He-Man, he's kind of like, basically, they're like, all right, Dolph Lundgren can't speak the best English in the world, although he looks like he could, like, picture perfect. Absolutely picture perfect.
Well, that's what I wanted to say. If you were going to get, in the 80s, if you were going to picture He-Man, it's Dolph Lundgren.
100%.
Out of anyone else in there, because as soon as you pull, like, Schwarzenegger into the mix, you're just seeing Conan. He's not pulling off He-Man.
Yeah. He doesn't have any kind of narrative drive. He doesn't go on a journey. He's just a good guy. He's the same guy at the start as he was at the end. All the narrative is built around Skeletor. Like at the start of the film, kind of like Star Wars. Like, people forget A New Hope starts and the bad guys have already won. Yeah. It's, and that's what happens here. The bad guys have already won. And it's what Skeletor, like he wants that last vestige of power. The film is about him getting rid of He-Man. It's not really about He-Man getting rid of Skeletor, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's a strange film in that regard because it's a Masters of the Universe film, which isn't really about He-Man, which is oddly similar to the recent Kevin Smith animated show, which is another one. It's called Masters of the Universe, and He-Man shows up and then immediately disappears. And you could say much the same for this film. It's like half the film is about Courtney Cox's dead parents, and the rest of the film is really about Skeletor's rise to power. And then He-Man just shows up looking admittedly fan-fucking-tastic, but yeah, that's pretty much what he does.
Can you imagine his face when they gave him the outfit? And you're like, okay, yeah, I mean, I'm in. I'll do it. But you said about Skeletor as well. It's about his rise to power, and it was a lovely little line between Evil Lyn and him. And we will get to Meg Foster playing Evil Lyn in a second.
She's great.
Yeah, but the line, which is, the Eternians won't give up. Something along that. I know I'm bastardizing this line, but the Eternians won't give up because He-Man is still out there. They have to see He-Man kneel. Mm-hmm. Right? Man-at-Arms, Teela, who gives that god-awful woman-at-arms line to the camera.
Oh, terrible.
Man-at-Arms, Teela, He-Man, Gwildor, and Sorceress. Mm-hmm. Did you see any other fucking Eternians?
No, all they mention at the start is that many Bothans or many Eternians, whatever it is, died. Like as Skeletor showed up using the key.
Other Eternians,
again, they reference it, but you never see it.
But the other Eternians won't give up until they see Skeletor, He-Man on his knees. Yeah, now, I know you've got budget constraints, but at least show me one or two Eternians fighting, not one or two more Eternians fighting.
The only time I can think is, when Skeletor says, plug me into the Jumbotron, or the equivalent of an Eternian Jumbotron, when it's like him kind of like, three times over and he's giving a speech. Do you see some people in the foreground there?
I can't remember. Because I saw that, and all I could think was fucking Rick and Morty. Show me what you got.
Yeah, in fairness, it did the job because all I was doing was looking at Skeletor. But yeah, you keep hearing about Eternians, but as far as I can tell, there's only really like 6 Eternians. Yeah. So yeah, it's quite bizarre.
You mentioned is this a film about Courtney Cox's grief over the loss of her parents? Now, I wholeheartedly, as a person who has lost a parent, I wholeheartedly agree with the grief, but I don't agree with the stupidity.
No.
In the fact that your dead mother is not just is she not dead, apparently, but she also knows where a cosmic key is. What's like, use your fucking head just a little bit. And I know you're grieving. I totally get that you're grieving. But your parent, who nobody's ever mentioned Eternia before, all of a sudden goes back and goes, oh, by the way, we haven't been dead. We've been hiding. We just need this cosmic key. You get me that? We can come back out of hiding.
She does say that they've been doing top secret work, don't they? Like, she does just enough. And it is bullshit. I mean, the thing is, that scene's actually pretty dark because... like my wife who was watching it with me, she said, when she turns back into Evil Lynn and Courtney Cox screams, my wife was like, well, why didn't you just snatch the key back? Yeah. I was like, yeah, but put yourself into her perspective. For that split second, she thought that her dead mother and her dead parents weren't actually dead. She's like, oh my God, she wanted to believe it so much. They were on a top secret mission, and maybe she is, as ridiculous as it sounds, maybe she is willing to believe that because give her the credit. Look what she's seen today. Yeah. She's seen suddenly alien monsters, He-Man, talk of Eternia, and let's be clear, she takes to it very quickly. Basically, He-Man saves her in the alleyway, and he says, oh yeah, I'm from Eternia, we got to stop Skeletor, cosmic key. And her response is pretty much, all right, I'll start helping you immediately. I have no follow-up questions.
How would you feel about...
She is a bit gullible.
How would you feel about a guy who's rocked up, who looks like he's just come out of an S&M basement?
In fairness, though, you have the 2 options, I suppose, of the people who are, the bat-faced guy, Beastman, Blade Master with his chainmail and his eye patch and his swords. Everyone's shooting at you. You run out and, yes, he's wearing underwear. He's wearing a cape, but he also has soft, luxurious hair. And, he does give her a hug. He picks her up. And, if Dolph Lundgren embraced me in his arms and carried me to safety, I think I would melt immediately too. I mean, it'd be very hard not to fall in love with Dolph Lundgren.
You said you watched this with your wife as well. My wife was never watching this film with me. I think she's seen it with me before, but the fact I watched this at 2 a.m. last night, she was like, fuck you, I'm going to bed. Like, that's not happening.
In fairness, I don't think that if I was saying that to my wife, I don't think He-Man or Master Universe would be the issue. If I said, are you going to stay with me and watch a movie at 2 a.m., it could be anything, and she'd tell me to go fuck myself.
Yeah.
So in fairness, she was more than happy to watch it with me. And like myself, I think despite there being numerous caveats, some of it, we've already mentioned to a certain extent, kind of holds up better than others. But I think quite enjoyed it still. Like, that is the thing with this film. It's not a great film. I'm not going to pretend for a second. But I don't think it's a bad film. I really don't think it is.
And I think I say this on pretty much every podcast. On every episode. Sorry, not every podcast. Like I'm doing fucking thousands of these things. On every episode. The difference between a great film and a great watch. Kind of thing, and we'll get to that.
Exactly.
Do the rating and everything.
Yeah. One of the things that makes this film work is, and obviously you've already kind of alluded to this, is the cast. And I think largely, I mean, you've already mentioned what's her name, Evil Lynn, played by Meg Foster. She's really good in this. Yeah, like, I think she's great. Like
no fucking contact lenses. They're her eyes.
That's insane. Yeah, I know. That's quite disturbing. But I mean, despite the fact that his face doesn't move, I think Billy Barter as Gwildor is actually pretty good. Like he's dumb. It's a Yoda ripoff. He's kind of, it's a budget replacement for Orko. But I was like, I actually don't mind Gwildor and his moo lines and his love of chicken. Oh no, it's not chicken, is it? Ribs. Which brings me to another question. Sorry, I know this is kind of going off piece a little bit here. Are we led to believe that everyone in Eternia is a vegetarian? And if so, where is He-Man getting his protein from? If we're going the traditional He-Man route, where he's kind of Adam, he gets the sword of power. Is that what it's called? Sword of power?
Sword of power, yeah.
Yeah, and turns into He-Man. Yes, it's magic. But in this, there is no Adam. He's just jacked. And I'm like, dude, you're not doing that without some skinless chicken. It's not fucking happening. But yeah, I think, Courtney, fresh-faced Bruce Springsteen era Courtney Cox is actually really good. The only one I'm not sure, obviously, James Tolkien as Detective Lubick is great fun. It was really, I think looking back, I assumed Gwildor was the kind of comedy relief, which he is to an extent, but I actually think it's probably Lubick.
As you get older, it is definitely Lubick.
Yeah. I think it is. But I mean, even Chelsea Fields as Sheila, I mean, she has that one terrible line, and she does have a habit of going from 0 to 60. She's either really nice, but then immediately like, let's shoot everyone.
And also,
she needs to chill out a bit.
I hate the way she holds her phaser gun, laser gun. Like,
it's so bad.
Yeah, so she holds it, but she holds it a bit close to her chin with her arms, and she's doing like almost going pew 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 pew. Like,
yeah,
what the fuck?
It's like, really bad. Like nobody.
And for you
just think somebody would step in and say, "Listen, this is how you hold a gun."
For a film where they're shooting lasers, they're deflecting lasers with swords. There's the hero again is straight out of an S&M basement, as I've already said. And it doesn't have to be a basement. It could be an S&M house. The fact that she held her gun wrong is what really took me out of this film.
Yeah. No, it absolutely did the same for me. It drove me nuts. And in fairness, the action scenes in this film aren't fantastic. I mean, a lot of them are actually choreographed by Anthony DeLongis, who
was Blade,
who was General Blade.
Yeah.
But it's a shame that like He-Man himself doesn't actually get to use his sword more. Like he does end up shooting a lot of people, and he's really, really bad at taking cover. Like he just ducks a lot. I'm like, it's a miracle that He-Man isn't dead, if truth be told.
Do you think in this film then, the narrative of this film, do you think that there is actually a Prince Adam? It's just because it's war, we're just seeing the He-Man?
Maybe there is a Cringer. Maybe they just kind of escaped, and there's an element that they're on a different part of the battle. As you say, they reference other Eternians who are still fighting. So I like to think that basically they're saying, well, if we did a sequel, if this was a massive hit, and they put they double, tripled the budget, whatever, that they could they haven't written those characters out. They could very easily say, it's like, oh, well, he is Cringer. He was battling Skeletor's troops.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that could work. But I don't know, man. I just always come back to the names in this film. It's just because we mentioned Evil Lynn and obviously Skeletor. I'm just like, you talk about like nominative determinism. Like Evil Lynn, like was she called Evil Lynn? Or did she become Evil Lynn?
Yeah.
Was Skeletor born Skeletor? Like, did they give birth to Skeletor and went,
no?
Wow, we're gonna have to call him Skeletor. I mean,
I think she was Evelyn.
Evelyn, okay,
Evelyn. But then when she became a minion of Skeletor, she was Evil Lynn. And
Skeletor was Jeff until that terrible acid accident, and then it was like, well, I'll call myself Skeletor.
I'm not too sure if it goes from the Filmation side, because I can't remember much about that, but there was a remake in the 2000s, I think, of Masters again, a cartoon remake, and he was Adam's uncle, so he was Rando's brother or something. Who wanted the Sword of Power for himself but couldn't take it, so he became Skeletor. I'm pretty sure that's where it is. And again, I could be totally wrong.
I think I'm sure you're right about that he was He-Man's uncle, and that his face was actually, funny enough, jokes aside, burnt by acid.
Yeah.
But there are different ones, I think. There was another one where it was something to do with like a moonstone or something like that, and that gave him extra power but also made him super evil. I think that was more from the cartoon. But yeah, I think there are different narrative reasons have been provided for why he has the face of a skeleton. And, is it just the face? I assume so. Because the rest of his body doesn't seem to be very skeleton-like. He's wearing a lot of Lycra.
Wasn't it like one hand or something that was also skeletal?
Skeletal. I think you just made up a word there. But yeah, I mean, I guess we're on the subject. I mean, we've already talked about He-Man's outfit. I mean, Evil Lynn's outfit's pretty wild. There's General Blade's kind of chainmail thing going on, but Skeletor steals the show. And there's a lot of, when I rewatched this film, I mean, I mentioned the fact that I think fundamentally it's a Skeletor film, but I think your other argument could be that this is a love story about Skeletor and He-Man, because he is so obsessed with He-Man. Yeah. The kind of nods to gay culture with the whole parade thing he's got going on with his barge. I mean, he's got like those little silver finger things he's got going on with his suit. He appears to be wearing a codpiece with his lycra. And then he gets the whole gold thing going on.
And before you say it, he gets the gold thing and he becomes fabulous.
Oh, he becomes super fabulous. And the one thing, like, obviously, the whole you must kneel thing, that's one thing. The obsession with He-Man, and, they even reference it, like, it's always been about us. It's always been about me and you, He-Man. But the scene, and it was a scene that freaked me out when I was younger, when I was like 5 years old and I went to see this in the cinema. When the very kinky scene when He-Man is tortured and whipped by General Blade.
Yeah.
Evil Lynn does the classic Evil Lynn, kind of smiles like she's enjoying seeing He-Man in pain. But the way Skeletor looks at him like, ooh, oh my God. Oh, dude. Like, he doesn't know if he's like upset or if he's aroused, or if he's upset about the fact that he's aroused. Like, there's a lot of emotion going on with Skeletor while He-Man... And He-Man, the whole time he's being whipped, he's just eyeballing him. And it's just like, man, this is intense.
It could also be links as well. Maybe there's underlying links that it is He-Man's Prince Adam's uncle, and he doesn't really want to see his nephew getting whipped. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, jokes aside about the whole gay relationship thing, I got the element, it's like, Skeletor talks a good game and stuff like that. And, in fairness, he does like kind of zap Sauron to death. But when he actually sees He-Man getting whipped, he doesn't seem to be all that happy about it. So maybe there is that whole thing about them having that familial relationship where he's like, I need him to kneel, hence why maybe he doesn't want to kill him. I need him to be subservient to me for me to kind of, have absolute power in Eternia. But he doesn't necessarily want to see him get hurt. So, I like to think that there might be a deeper layer there. And, that's Frank Langella just kind of, knocking out the park with that. You think of the two performances. At one end, you got Frank Langella just being so great with all that ridiculous makeup on. And then at the other end, you've got Dolph Lundgren being, Dolph Lundgren, let's be honest. Yeah.
There was a scene in this film that actually brought me back to my childhood as well. It's the scene where they pull up to Julie's house. It is Julie she plays, isn't it, Courtney Cox?
Yeah, Julie. Yeah.
They pull up to Julie's house, the copper and the boyfriend, and
Kevin.
Kevin, yeah. And they go,
Kevin.
Oh, there you go, she's home. Oh, no, they leave that light on for the burglars. Oh, my God, that was my childhood, right? Whenever we would go out, my mother would leave the landing light on, and you got the burglars going, well, fuck, we can't do anything. They're all congregating on the landing, so we might as well leave. Do you know what I mean? And we'll leave the TV on, or if you were because my grandparents did this as well. It wasn't the TV, because you don't leave the TV on. You leave the radio on.
That's different. Yeah, we actually did the same thing with the light, but we've never left the TV or the radio.
I don't get it. Like, I don't get why you would leave the like.
I don't know. To my mind, it made sense.
But what I will say is, we were never burgled.
Yeah, and honestly, we do. Honestly, mate, we do the same thing even now. We don't have to the same extent because we have cats and we have a cat sitter come over and we have friends who come over and take care of the cats. So we have people coming over. But in our last flat, when we went on a holiday for, say, 2-3 weeks and we put the cats in a cattery, we had one of those timers. So we plug it into the wall, you connect the timer, and it turns on like an hour a day. So we did used to do the thing where the lamp would turn on an hour a day. And this was, 3-4 years ago. So, dude, I'm still totally on board for the lights on the landing thing. Because I'm in the same mindset. I'm like, if a burglar came past, and honestly, I think if he sees a light on, he's like, fuck, I'm not burgling the house. Because maybe it comes back to Home Alone. I don't know.
Because I'm paying for my own electricity. I ain't leaving lights on when I'm going out. Fuck that for a laugh.
Well, that's how you end up getting robbed. You're not playing the long game.
I do love the fact that a burglar walk past and go, oh, there's a light on in the landing. No. Or they're casing your house out every couple of days and they go, fuck me, they've turned their light on at 7 p.m. for 35 minutes for the last 3 days. Wonder what they're doing there.
They're definitely in, though. They're definitely in for those 35 minutes for sure. Yeah. To bring it back to the film,
made me laugh.
One of the most disappointing things in this film, the fact that we only got a few hints of it, is whatever you might say about Dolph Lundgren, he looks the part, and I just wanted him to be a bit more He-Man, and it's just the fight scenes just aren't quite as good as you want them to be. And there was one scene in particular, which I think, that I actually quite like the last fight scene, which is, again, budget issues, we'll come to that in a minute. But the scene which really was the scene on top of the building, The roof where fucking Skeletor totally gets the drop on everyone. They're all talking, and he just sneaks up drive-by style and his giant barge. And everyone's just like, I don't hear anything. I don't hear them coming down the street. I don't hear the hundreds of stormtroopers marching. None of it.
Is that like an electric car nowadays, where an electric car will just pull up and you just hear, ooh. Like he's just there, just raising. I mean, you'd fucking hear the afterburners or something as that thing's floating.
You would hear him coming down the street, for God's sake. But that aside, you have that fight scene. But then when He-Man shows up after the admittedly slightly dodgy flying around on a plate thing, and that fantastic theme kicks in. And he's going in, he's kicking ass. They all jump on him. He pushes them all off. He really uses the sword for the first time. He kicks them, and Skeletor, stop! And he's like going to kill his friends and stuff. But when I saw that, I was like, oh, that was like He-Man really being He-Man, like being a total badass and being like the true hero of the film.
Yeah.
And I just wanted like 2 or 3 more scenes like that. There's a scene earlier in the film where he saves Julie and fights Beastman and stuff, which is okay, but the choreography is not fantastic. Obviously, like everything else in this film, it's shot at night. And that was my main takeaway. I just wanted more He-Man doing He-Man shit.
What I loved about the fight scenes as well, it was classic sword play for that period, where, because again, it's a PG rating, when he's hitting them in the body with his sword, he's hitting them face side, not edge side. So he's hitting them in the body face side. So there's nothing. He's basically slapping them in the stomach with his sword. There's not much happening.
And it's one of those things again. Like you see this. There's so much in this film which is almost very good, but it just doesn't quite work. And we talk about films where, like, could they be remade? Would we want to see a remake? I absolutely want to see a He-Man film.
Oh, mate, they've been going on about it for years. We'll get into it.
Well, it's amazing that they haven't got around to it. And it's like, I feel like this film is, and again, I suppose kind of like hardcore He-Man fans might completely disagree. But I'm like, tonally, I'm not a million miles away from this film in terms of what I'd like to see.
I think Shazam as well has kind of proved that you can do the kid turning into the hero thing and not be taken out of it. Because Shazam did it quite well with Billy Batson becoming Shazam, or Captain Marvel, whoever. Like, obviously, they can't say Captain Marvel on the film. But that's the one thing that they lost with this, was the fact that it's a journey of this kid is saving the entire planet, but he's just a kid in a man's body.
Mm-hmm. And that is the thing with this film. I mean, we mentioned it earlier. I think the reason they probably chose to not do that is because this isn't a He-Man film. If you have that narrative, you have to make this a He-Man film.
Yeah.
You can't just have Dolph Lundgren at the start of the film turn from like a teenager into Dolph Lundgren and then be like, we're off to the fucking races. You've got to make that the narrative of the film. And that's not what they're interested in. They're interested in Frank Langella being Skeletor, and rightly so. So it makes sense for this film for He-Man to just be He-Man, because I think it just, unless you're going to make this film, 2 hours long, because what is it? It's not a very long film in particular.
It's 2 hours, yeah.
It's not 2 hours, is it, this film?
I watched it on recording, so it was 2 hours with adverts. I can't really
check this out now. I've got to check this out. This isn't great podcasting, but I want to see how long it is.
1 hour and 46 minutes.
1 hour and 46. Yeah, that's actually a little bit longer than I thought it was. But yeah, this film needs to be over 2 hours if you're going to do the whole Adam and He-Man thing. But like I said, you could theoretically, if they had made a sequel, you could have still brought that in. Like, they don't kind of put that off the table. It doesn't make sense for this film for He-Man to be Adam, because they're already in the middle of a war. Like, you need to He-Man the fuck up. So yeah, after this, if you do another film, you could have him do the whole Adam thing.
Sorry.
But
I've just gone back on myself as well. There are Eternians in this film. They come out.
Is it all at the start?
They come out of the woodwork at the end, don't they? When all of a sudden they've given Ludwig.
What's that?
What was his name? The copper.
Lubick.
So they've given Lubick a missus. All of a sudden,
there's a lot of questions about that, man.
So that's all. But all of a sudden, the Eternians come out of the woodwork at the end. So if anyone's listening to this podcast and they're screaming at me saying that they are Eternians, they all just appear at the end. But they gave him a wife.
I didn't notice. All right, fair play. I didn't notice anyone else. All I was thinking was like, wait, so if you think again, there's clear comparisons to Star Wars. Like, the end of A New Hope, they all get medals.
Yeah.
In this, the Eternians Yeah, well, justice for Chewie. We're all on board. So in this, instead of medals, they're just handing out women. Like, that's the thing. Like, and you can see Lubick, like, he's being very 1980s white man about this. He's like, I got this woman, I got the food, I've got the horse. Because okay, he doesn't sound like that.
Because when he says about the early retirement, and he grabs her, and he's got myself a woman, he shakes her, and I'm like,
yeah, like, how quickly is he wearing like a fucking toga?
Yeah,
like, how quickly have they provided him with a woman who apparently is more than happy?
He shot 3 fucking robots. That's all he did. He shot 3 robots. He's not even... It's not just the fact that they've asked him to stay. He's in high command. He's on the fucking stage. People are looking at this prick.
Yeah. And that's the thing. He was largely... I mean, useless. I would say... it wasn't even useless. Like, he was detrimental to their efforts. That's the word I was looking for. He was without question, for the most part, detrimental to their efforts to save Eternia, to save the universe, whatever. Up until at the end, he gets up, like you say, and shoots a few robots with a shotgun. And for that little bit of trouble, he's handed a beautiful whore. I mean, is that what and Gwildor is provided with golden ribbons to put in his hair and beard. Oh my God. What the fuck was up with those golden ribbons?
I love that you've got the guy that can build anything and it doesn't matter. And there's the scene where, as you just said, where they jump in and then Lubick does all this shooting. Well, I say all this shooting, shoots 3 people. But just before that, they're going on, because Kevin knows the tones, which I still think is random, but okay, because Kevin knows the tones. Can we jump? And it's, oh, yeah, I think we can do it. I just need a thingamabob, a whatchamacallit, and a who's it. And they go, oh, there you go.
I have this. I have that. Yeah, well, all right, that was the thing. Right. It's no surprise we haven't mentioned Kevin, who, played by Robert Duncan, isn't fantastic in this one.
No.
But his ability, like, they were just like, Gwildor, you know, the supposed genius, like, if only somebody could remember these 6 simple and super catchy tones. Like, that's the ability. It's like, as soon as you hear the first song, bum, 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 who can't remember that? It's so fucking... And he's like, oh, well, if I hear a tune, I can just remember it because I'm Kevin the musician. Like, dude, you have got the most useless and over, like, I don't know, man. Like, everyone seems to have a boner about his very limited musical ability. I'm amazed that was all it took. Like, oh, nobody can remember those 6 tones? That's it? Come on. But like you said, but everyone's got the hoogamajiggies and the whatchamacallits. They've all just got those in their goddamn pockets. I'd say that's much more impressive than his ability to remember 6 simple chords.
Not even on their pockets. It's just conveniently, like Tila, she's pretty much slimmed out, streamlined, just with her, but the one thingamabob that he needs is just stuck to her arm. Like, oh, there you go.
Yeah, and my arm's like, oh, I have one of those. Oh my God, I have one of those. This is unbelievable.
You know,
luckily we have this musical genius and we're covered in random shit, which we might just need for this. So,
and the other thing as well,
it all worked out.
Because they pretty much jumped to Earth with basically the clothes on their back because they were escaping Skeletor's forces. But where did Gwildor get the tech to convert that pink Cadillac?
God knows.
Do you know what I mean? Because when you sit in there, he's all of a sudden, it's got a fucking, like, a lever that looks like it's out of a spaceship. Like, all I got to do is pull this down, and it's gone.
Like, I can only assume it all came from Charlie's largely destroyed.
This was before that, though, wasn't it? Yeah, he picked them
in
up.
that case, I haven't got a clue. The magic of Gwildor, we'll put it down to.
And
as ridiculous as that was.
We talked about the thingamabobs and the who's and the what's it. Their referencing to time was fantastic. We have 3/4 of a chromum left before... like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I don't even know how long this movie took. I mean, the whole thing seemed to go by, in terms of real time.
It was an evening.
I mean, it was just an evening.
It was an evening.
So are we talking the same evening Lubick received both his toga and his fancy whore? It looks like the same. He receives a whore. Gwildor receives, I keep coming back to it, the golden whatchamacallit on his face. Yeah. And why were they given that little stone? Was it just as a reminder that it actually happened?
I think so.
You know, like, yeah, you know,
because
the magic stone.
Because all of a sudden she's back there, then her parents are there, and it's like, oh, it may have been all a dream, but hang on.
Yeah. But no, we put magic.
Yeah.
I have the power. In fairness, that was a cool. Like, I like the end of this film. Like, as ridiculous it is, when I love the scene where Skeletor, gets the power. It's all kind of like glazed over why it's happening. I am more than man, more than your equal. I am a god. And then he turns gold with that ridiculous hat where it makes it look like he's literally going to fall over. And he has magic coming out of his eyes.
He is literally a Power Rangers villain. Like
he is a Power Rangers villain.
It's fantastic. Like he could have easily gone up against like Jason Gordon Frank or whatever his name is.
Fuck knows, man.
Best Power Rangers.
I wasn't much of a Power Rangers guy, but that like those scenes in particular, and obviously the throne room being so impressive and where much of the budget went. I think that was like the movie at its best. Like when He-Man pushes over the giant statue, and it still gives me chills that bit when He-Man gets to the stage. And he's electrocuted him. And again, that fucking theme tune, which is so underrated. And he keeps trying to grab the sword.
Yeah.
And he keeps shocking him. And the music keeps building. And eventually, like the proper nerdy bit where he pulls out the sword and does I Have the Power. I was like, that bit is fucking dope. It's such a great movie. And then you go straight into the fight with him and Skeletor. And it's a good fight. Like, I know they shot it in darkness because they had already run out of budget and they'd already started dismantling the set. But
I know
you put it down as a stylistically cool fight.
It is good, and it is choreographed quite well, especially because you got Skeletor's massive staff, not a euphemism, and He-Man's sword, and that's a big cumbersome sword as well. So
it just looks cool. Like it's got all those like visual elements you're looking for. And I mean, it's not actually, like, you won't be surprised to hear Frank Langella fighting in that scene. It's actually General Blades, Anthony Longus. Sorry, is that his name? Anthony DeLongis, I think it is.
DeLongis.
He's actually in the makeup for that fight scene, and obviously he's choreographing it as well. So that's the strongest fight scene in the film, and I think it's like a fitting ending to what is a largely pretty enjoyable film. But it's like when I'm watching that scene again, it all comes back to the fact that it's like this is almost the film I want to see. This is almost a legitimately good film, but it never quite gets there, and so much of that is tied up in the limited budget and the admittedly so direction from first-time director Gary Goddard, who, let's be honest, is most famous for designing famous theme parks rides rather than movies. But
it's after everything.
It's not far off.
After the end, the battle's over and they all realize they won. It's probably some of the best acting from Dolph Lundgren, mind, when he realizes it's all over and he's just there going, victory.
It's a great line, and I love the whole the good journey thing.
Yeah.
Like don't say goodbye, say good journey, live the journey and stuff. I really liked it. I like his delivery. I like the story behind it.
I don't mind saying the good journey. It's the fact you got to slap yourself in the face to do it.
Yeah, good journey. But like you say, this film's from 1987, and those are the two things. Like, as soon as we posted this on Facebook, one of my friends immediately came back with the Dolph Lundgren victory, like the look on his face, like, oh, victory. And someone else did good journey. It's like those are the things that kind of totally stand out for this film. And despite this film being an unbelievably mixed bag, I think it's fair to say, people love this film. People have a real soft spot for this film. And I don't think it's purely nostalgia. I think there is something to this film more beyond the simple fact that it's a tie into a beloved toy line. Like, I remember having the toys when I was younger in that kind of, I'm not sure if it was the same with you, but I had a lot of secondhand toys. Like, I didn't buy He-Man in the shops. A lot of them came from charity stores. I just accumulated He-Man shit. But He-Man itself, the cartoon, wasn't actually a massive part of my youth because it was, like you said, it was actually 85, 84. I was really young then. What I remember most about Master Universe is actually the movie. That's why I have the greatest attachment to it.
So I did have a couple of toys, and I was really pissed off when I found out the Trapjaw actually had two arms. But I always remember my very first bike was a Masters of the Universe bike.
Oh, awesome.
So we had the He-Man stuff on there.
A BMX, I'm assuming.
Yeah. That was the first bike that the stabilizers got taken off for me. So I was able, didn't use my brakes, went straight into a wall, but that's a different story altogether.
Absolutely.
But what I do remember...
Very similar to the narrative of Frank Langella becoming Skeletor, if you really want to look at it in that perspective.
What I do remember most about that bike, which I absolutely loved, and I wish I had that now for my kid. on the crossbar, on the handlebars, you could pop the shield off. So the shield on the handlebars, you could pop it off and hold it. And the sword went down between the seat and the wheels behind you. So
it's fucking dope.
You could then just pull the sword out. So I'm there, no hands on the wheel, mate, holding my shield, holding my sword, going down a hill. There's a reason jousting. There's a reason why I crashed into a wall.
Yeah, that's basically sounds like infant jousting, and surely like lawsuits coming from all over the place in 2021.
It was the 80s. Nobody gave a shit.
Nobody gave a shit. This was a decade when you just had little shits like you just cycling directly into walls for no reason. Yes. I actually did the same. I have this really vivid memory. I mean, you know the flower gardens in Both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was in the flower gardens, and for some reason there was a tree next to the tennis courts, and all the branches came down, like right down to the floor. And I told myself, I'm going to cycle through those branches. And of course, I remember cycling towards like, this is going to be cool. And it was just my brain totally blanked out the thing. He's like, you do realize behind those branches, there's a tree trunk, right? And I didn't remember that until I hit the tree trunk with my face. Yeah. So again, just stupid shit I did with it. Like, imagine if I'd had a bike with a shield and a sword on it. For fuck's sake, I would have killed myself.
Like when I was a kid, I thought that because I wore shoes, I was fine. I can step on a plank with a nail in it. I'll be fine.
Of course, these nail-proof shoes I have on. Of course.
2 hours down A&E after a tetanus shot and some stitches on the ball of my foot.
And you're back to the races. To the races. Well, I think that's a perfect time, as good a time as any, to move on to facts. So we've covered a few, but do you have a few more?
I do have a few facts.
A couple, actually.
I got one for a lot of these we've already, like you just said, we've
these, well, we can just drop those out, but
where's my order?
I mean, I've got a few here. I mean, again, apologies if I'm stepping in your feet here. I mean, Dolph Lundgren was originally actually going to be dubbed, but they run out of money. And I'm glad they kept him in because it adds a certain element of kind of, mystical, like, he's from Eternia. Why should he sound English, I guess? And we mentioned the fact that Mattel mandate that He-Man can't kill, hence the robots. And you might have noticed in the film, Mattel actually had a contest to be in this film. And again, they rushed it so much that when you actually see it, he's referenced to as Pig Boy in the film.
Pig Boy,
Pig Boy, I was like, do you see him? And there is a scene when Skeletor comes into the throne room and Pig Boy is holding his staff and hands it to Skeletor. And the camera does stick with Pig Boy for like a second longer than it should, as if saying, you've won the competition. You're going to have your moment, Pig Boy. But I'm like, imagine if you're like 8 years old, you're like, oh my God, I've won the opportunity to be a master of the universe. And all your friends are like, oh, you're going to be Trap Joe, you're going to be Moss Man. Like, I'm Pig Boy. Like, there's no way that kid didn't go back to school and was known as Pig Boy for the rest of his fucking life. Jesus Christ. That was the worst prize of all time.
He's going in telling people I'm going to be a master of the universe. And then he's coming out like, yeah, you were in master of the universe, wasn't you, Pig Boy?
Yeah, absolutely. Evil Lynn's costume weighed 45 pounds, so that's the reason she stood so funny and couldn't move much. We've already mentioned the fact that it was set in the real world safe budget. It was originally going to be largely in Eternia. And I think that's pretty much it. Like the other stuff we've already mentioned. So if you've got a few more.
Yeah, I got a few. So Frank Langella went on record in an interview stating that playing Skeletor was one of his favourite roles. His young son was a huge fan and was running around the house shouting by the power of Greyskull. So he took the role for him. He wrote some of his own lines, like, tell me about the loneliness of good. He-Man is its equal to the loneliness of evil. So
it's a good line.
It is a very good line. And it also...
It's a good line.
And the fact that now, I wonder if 30 years later, the fact that he's compared, his portrayal in that is compared to going out to a student night in Aberystwyth. I wonder if he thinks he's made it now.
Absolutely. If somehow we can get Frank Langella to listen to this, Jesus Christ, wouldn't that just be the best?
Oh my God. So many viewers of the film commented on actress Meg Foster's eerily effective contact lenses, which gave her character Evelyn a sinister and earthly air. Actually, she wore no contact lenses. Her eyes naturally have blue-grey irises and tiny pupils, giving her a striking appearance. She has often been cast in sci-fi fantasy roles because of them, and jokes that she appeals to casting directors as she brings her own special effect with her for free.
She totally does.
Is I've seen her in quite a few things, but I've seen her randomly in films. Best of the Best 2, Blind Fury. where she's actually like a mother or a wife or something like that. But I just see her and think, well, you're going to be evil. And she's never evil. And you think, fucking hell. Like,
with those eyes?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I mean, she has the most evil eyes. I mean, they're very impressive. But
they are.
It suits a character called Evelyn for sure.
Dolph said in a French magazine that working on this film was a nightmare. The shooting schedule was 5 months, including 2 months of night shooting. He said he was approached to do a sequel during shooting and he turned down the offer. However, in an interview with the IO9 website promoting The Expendables, Lundgren said he would return to appear in a new Masters of the Universe movie as either a cameo or He-Man. So that was what
I'd love to see him return as, well, even as He-Man's father. That'd be fucking dope.
Yeah. So a script for sequel to be titled Masters of the Universe 2 Cyborg was written. It followed He-Man, who returned to Earth to battle Skeletor, who had left Earth a post-apocalyptic wasteland. The film was to feature Trapjaw and She-Ra, and Albert Pion was hired to direct. Because the film bombed at the box office, Mattel and Cannon decided to cancel production on the sequel. Pion rewrote the script, which became Cyborg. There's a couple of things about that. There was that you take with a grain of salt about the, like, yeah, they did do Cyborg because He-Man weren't able to do a sequel. But that one says that it was basically because Master Universe bombed, but then you have another comment stating that it was because Canon went bankrupt with the whole Spider-Man things. So, I mean, yes,
There's
so
lots to unpack with that. There's a lot of different stories, aren't there?
But you can drill down to the fact that they made Cyborg because they couldn't make Master Universe 2.
Yeah. And it's one that's interesting. We didn't mention it earlier, the fact that if you watch this film and just left the cinema, you'd be like, wait, you're going to do a sequel where you fight Skeletor again? It's like, wait, didn't Skeletor die? It's like, this was the first film I ever saw in the cinema. And I was like, wait, there's an after credit sequence? Like, you know, we take them for granted now with all the Marvel films. This film was doing it in 1985. It's a very short one, but the whole, and it's, you know, obviously it's ill-fated. It doesn't age well because Skeletor pops out of the water off the pink juice and I'll be back. And of course, it never is back.
Whereas it's Buckaroo Banzai as well. He will return.
Of course. But I remember when I was young, like, I have such vivid memories of seeing this in the cinema. And my dad saying, oh, no, we have to stay for all the credits. And when he was saying it, I was like, well, like, what, as a sign of respect, we have to stay for all of it? And then fucking Skeletor popped out. I was like, holy shit. I was like, do all films in the cinema do this? Because, you know, I was just used to watching films. I didn't know any better. But it's strange that was a thing then, but just disappeared largely for ages until Marvel largely brought it back.
You kind of wonder how many films probably did have after credits and you just never knew.
Yeah, maybe. I think it's a shame that certain, like, you know, you think of the after credits of He-Man and that has been brought back. When are they going to bring back the Predator style credit sequence? That's what I want to see. It's like a really dark film and then the oddly jovial after credit sequence.
And you could have had that a lot. There was so many moments from like a sitcom in this film, usually over Gwildor. If Gwildor did something, all of a sudden the rest of the actors go, ha ha ha, Gwildor.
Oh.
Yeah.
Gwildor, are you stealing fucking ribs again? You are someone else, Gwildor. This film would be great if, like, at the end of the film, they had just had the credit sequence and they'd had them all look at the camera, He-Man, Skeletor, the full works going, hey, Evil Lynn, a cheeky little smile, Batface, what the fuck his name is, Kirk, with his claw, holding the claw up, like, don't forget me. That'd be awesome.
This might hint as to why Beastman didn't speak. Beastman's prosthetic teeth were so large that performer Tony Carroll was unable to close his mouth when in costume. After a while, he would begin to drool, filling his chin piece with saliva and weighting this down.
Nice. You think if the drool came out over the chin, it'd be kind of cool and effective, but just kind of collecting in the jowly kind of bits, not so fun.
His chin and his jaw are just floating in saliva. Yeah. I think I've lost you.
Spaghetti.
Oh, hello.
Oh, yeah, no, we're back. We're back. Okay, we'll keep going. Moving on. Right, I'm making this the last one because this is a long one, and this is where I said, well, you take these with a grain of salt. Masters of the Universe sequel was actually written and cast, but was never filmed. Director Albert Pion proposed to producers Menahem Golan and Yoram Globus that he would make the sequel and a Spider-Man film back-to-back at De Laurentiis studio in Wilmington, North Carolina. The sets for the two movies were built, the costumes were made, both films had been fully cast, and the budget for Masters of the Universe Part 2 was set to $4.5 million.
The Mattel Toy Company also gave their approval to many of the characters that would appear in the sequel. The only known actor cast for the sequel was Surfer Laird Hamilton as He-Man, and the only aspect known about the sequel screenplay was that He-Man would have returned to Earth and was disguised as a professional quarterback. Peon would also be using the same high school set for Kevin and Julie later when he would direct Spider-Man. It is not known, though, if there were any new characters introduced from the Masters of the Universe cartoon and or toy line for the sequel. However, Canon would be unable to make both the Masters of the Universe sequel and Spider-Man, as Canon Films would go out of business. Fuck me, that was long.
That was long. It's, pretty good, though. I don't have any... the only one I've got is... I thought it was quite an interesting one, that the Marvel Comics adaptation retained a narrative of the original script that showed that Eternia had been colonized by human astronauts from the future, including He-Man's mother. So in the comic book adaptation and the original screenplay for this film, it was basically suggested that humans from the future colonized Eternia and that He-Man's mother was human.
Yeah,
I was like, that's kind of an interesting take.
That is actually hinted at in the original Filmation series as well. Because in this, they don't know, in this film, they don't know Earth. But in the Filmation TV show, his mother is actually an astronaut from Earth.
Okay, so it is linked to that then. Yeah. Fair enough. Well, as part of the script. Oh, that's cool. All right, so what's next? Soundtrack? We've already mentioned it a lot.
There's not much more you can say about that. The fact that the original, the main score is great.
It is great. I really like, as I said, the bum, 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 bum. I think that's a really, I know it's only 6 chords, but in the same way, again, as Close Encounters, it sticks in the head. It is very much the main theme, which wins out. But it's no surprise. Yes, it sounds very John Williams-esque, which I think they were going for deliberately. But the score was by Bill Conti. This is a guy who did Rocky, he did Karate Kid, Your Eyes Only. He won an Oscar for The Right Stuff. This isn't some chump they pulled up off the street. This is, no, it's not Crash. I thought the video. No,
I'm laughing at that. All I can think of now is The Right Stuff. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, that'd be a different film, I think. But yeah, this guy is a talented composer, and it's a fantastic score. I think it's one of the highlights of this film for sure. In terms of legacy, well, it's a weird one because, of course, we could go into the legacy of He-Man, but what we're really asking the question of is what's the legacy of the movie? And the legacy of the movie is almost killing He-Man, bizarrely. Yeah. The movie doesn't really have a legacy. There were, we mentioned the fact that there was no sequel. There's never really been any follow-up. So it's just the movie and that's it. And as I said, the closest thing it has to a legacy is completely derailing the toy line. So obviously, He-Man has everything. There's comic books, there's toys, there's fucking board games. There's, surprising, we'll get to in a minute, not many video games, but there's He-Man everything. Like you said, you had a He-Man bike when you were younger, the whole spiel. But there weren't many He-Man or Masters of the Universe toys. There was, I don't think anyone had a bed cover with Dolph Lundgren's face on it. It just it was such a flop that it just never really caught on. So it bizarrely doesn't really have a legacy in a strange way. Well, no, despite people like us who have a really soft spot for it.
They wanted this to sell more toys and things like that, and it kind of killed it.
It backfired completely.
Yeah, and even to the point where people have had real trouble making the film. And because even though you're basing it on the actual IP itself, not this film, it's just you cannot get that taste out of your mouth.
Well, yeah, there's no escaping the fact that people will say, well, we've tried to do a Masters of the Universe film and it failed. That there's no two ways about it. Yeah. But you can make a very different film. The fact of the matter is, this film was, ice skating uphill from the word go with that kind of budget. Because I know 17 million budget isn't a tiny budget for that time, but when you're talking about Masters of the Universe, you need to be all in on it. This needs Disney money. There's no two ways about it.
The only other thing I could link this to, that they made a film, it bombed big time, and it kind of killed any future, is Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
Which again, had a soft spot for as a kid.
I didn't.
Seen it for a while, and I'm pretty sure it probably doesn't hold up. And
I have no interest in revisiting Super Mario Brothers the movie at all. I think this film has a lot of positives. Absolutely not. I'm not doing Super Mario Brothers. No
all I can
way.
think, well, if we're never doing Super Mario Brothers because you vetoed it, I am bringing it up on this podcast then, on this episode, is the fact that all I can really remember from that is the Walk the Dinosaur scene, where they all got those little jump boots and they're in a nightclub walking the dinosaur.
Jokes aside, it might actually be interesting revisiting that film because it is absolutely insane. It's insane, that film, but it's not good. There's not much to kind of, like, you know, you think of like another failure, like Howard the Duck. Like Howard the Duck, I feel like I could go back to and have fun with. Super Mario Brothers, I'm not sure I could go back to and have fun with. I would just be like depressed, I think, the whole time.
You'd have so much fun with Howard the Duck. You'd have an hour and a half conversation on the fact that Leah Thompson fucked the duck for a start.
Absolutely. Yeah, just on how cute she was. Oh man, she was so cute. But she definitely fucks the man duck.
Yeah, we are so digressing. Let's get back to Masters of the Universe.
Oh yeah, well, I know it's Masters of the Universe, but seriously, if you've listened this far and you've stuck with us, go onto Google, type in Howard the Duck sex scene, and watch Leah Thomas basically force herself pretty forcefully on a man duck from space. It's so fucking bizarre. It has to be seen to be believed if you haven't seen it before. And even if you have seen it, rewatch it because it's weirder than you remember.
And then stick around for the final scene where they sing the Howard the Duck song.
Of course, that goes without saying. So the last thing, video games. I mean, I've already mentioned it briefly. There's very few video games based on He-Man or Master Universe. There was an iOS game from 2012, which actually looked really cool, but was so-so. But before that, there was actually a video game based on the movie, Master Universe, the movie for like the Spectrum, the Commodore 64. There was an early He-Man game, again, based on the cartoon and the comics for those kind of early systems, C64, Spectrum, etc. And then there was just nothing. No. Nothing for just decades. And it's just like, how has nobody made a Masters of the Universe game? I just find it absolutely insane. So I guess the question is like, you know, who would you want to make one today? And I didn't have to think long. I mean, immediately I was like, oh, you need something with solid combat. Obviously, I want a beautiful open world. And what I thought of was Sucker Punch. And I'm not sure if you played Ghost of Tsushima on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5.
On my list. I really want to play it.
It's a very good game, obviously very Japanese for obvious reasons, but fundamentally the structure of that game, the combat, you could, you know, obviously we're talking samurai, but, you know, you could build a game where instead of like running around a beautiful Eternia, a beautiful kind of island on Japan, just replace that with Eternia. Instead of a horse, you have Cringer / Battle Cat. Instead of samurai, you have kind of more traditional sword and sorcery style combat, I suppose. But I totally feel like if you gave Sucker Punch the budget to make a Master Universe game, man, they would absolutely knock it out of the park.
For me, I'd give it to, Ninja Theory.
That's a great shout too.
Even though it didn't do as well as people wanted to, I actually thoroughly enjoyed, was it Devil May Cry DMC?
Oh, I love that game. I thought it was so unfairly vilified because they made him, like, they changed the color of his hair. Yeah. Like, the fucking internet trolls being dickheads. I actually prefer DMC to a lot of the Devil May Cry games. It's more
fast-paced, the action in it, even the story. I really enjoyed DMC Devil May Cry. And Ninja Theory, I thought, I was going to say a super good job.
You did a super good job, guys. Super good job.
You did a really good job with it. And I know, like, you can't compare. It was a Dante. No, what was the?
It's Dante, yeah.
It is Dante, yeah. You can't compare Dante to He-Man because Dante moves around faster than He-Man would. But the art style that they deliver, the combat style that they deliver would be perfect for a Masters of the Universe game. I'm sorry, but I think it would.
I think, like you said, you know, it doesn't have to. I mean, what's there more the recent game about? Oh my God, what's it called? Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Yes. That's got much slower combat. Again, a beautiful, and again, like that Norse world. You could. It's not a direct comparison, but it shows that, you know, there's no reason they couldn't create a genuinely beautiful Eternia. Just because they do fast-paced combat for DMC, it's because they had to, because they were making a Devil May Cry game. They're basically aping Platinum Games. But you look at their other games, Heavenly Sword, a bit slower. And in terms of whether they could do a kind of a big beautiful world with kind of interesting traversal and combat. I mean, you only have to look to, I'm not sure if you ever played it, but Enslaved Odyssey to the West, which is based on...
Loved it. Nobody knows
such a
it's
good
based
game.
on Journey to the West. It's based on Monkey.
Yeah.
I actually really want a re-edit, not a re-edit. What do they call them when they bring them back out again?
Remake.
I want a remaster.
Yeah.
No, don't remake it. Just give me a remastered version of that game. Fucking love that game. And I've never heard anyone else who played it.
No, I absolutely love that game. And actually, I wrote an article, because I used to write for a video game website, about how I kind of low-key fell in love with the female character from the game, whose name I forgot. It was like the first time I was like, am I getting a crush on a video game character? But it was getting to that point of like realism in games. And I just thought her character in that video game was so well written, and like obviously motion capture performance. I just thought she was brilliant. But you talk about a company who can do the narrative side, they can do the combat side. It's like I actually prefer your version now. I think I'd go with. I've had my mind changed.
I was actually thinking as well.
I think Sucker Punch do a great job, but I think Ninja Theory might be an even better choice.
If you want to go copy and paste as well, and with the combat-esque and everything like that, Santa Monica Studio, who gave us the latest God of War.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of companies that could do the job, but like the movie itself, like if you were going to remake this film or if you're going to turn it into a video game, I just feel like if you're going to do it justice, it needs that kind of budget. Like it needs somebody to you need a talented team to put in the budget. And the thing is, if someone was going to make a live action film, I would like them at least tonally to kind of stick with what they did with Masters of the Universe in '87. Because I don't think I want a kind of day-glow comic book style. Like, they're doing cartoons of Masters of the Universe right now, and they're very good. Like, despite I know some people get very upset because He-Man's not in it, and it's actually more about Teela or whatever, those internet boners. But that's perfectly fine as an anime. If you're going to make a live-action film, I would actually like something relatively close to what we got here, just with maybe a director with a bit more experience and obviously more budget. But if Frank Langella is still willing to come back as Skeletor, despite the fact he's probably about 89 years old now, but I'd happily see him return. But I think that's about it for Master Universe. I think we've covered it. So I guess as usual, the only questions are, what would you score it, and would you recommend it to others?
So this is going to be a rare one where I would score it. I'm not going to score it high, but it's middle of the road. So it's a 3 all the way. Like it's.
By the way, it's 83. I do apologize. 83.
It's an enjoyable film. It's let down with a little bit on the acting side, a little bit on the directing side, and budget wise and all that. But it's a great middle of the road film. So it's a 3. But the reason why I say it'd be a bit different is because usually with 3s and with films like this, we say that we would recommend it to the right people. I'm not too sure I know anybody who I would recommend this film to.
I mean, to say I mean, just what you said, but in my voice. I feel exactly the same. It's a 3-star film. It's not a great film. I don't think it's a disaster. It's an enjoyable 3-star movie with all the faults you've already outlined, and the exact same response in terms of recommendations. Unless you grew up with this, unless you have a nostalgia attached to it, I don't think I'm telling anybody nowadays to go. If they haven't already gone out and watched it because they were a fan of He-Man when they were younger, I'm not going to tell them to go and watch this film because I don't think they'll enjoy it. So no, I'm absolutely on board with you there, dude. As much as I enjoyed it, but so much of that is tied in nostalgia and us having He-Man shit when we were kids and stuff. So yeah, I enjoyed it. You enjoyed it. Let everyone else ignore it. I think that's fine.
I'm good with that.
Yeah. So what are we doing next week, dude?
That's what's next, is it? That's the next thing. Now, just what we're doing next week.
Yeah, I think it's just what we're doing next week. Yeah.
Okay. So I figured. Well, I figured we did discuss this offline that we're already into October, so we might as well make the next
spooky season.
Yeah. Speaking of spooky season, there's a siren.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Yeah, that was well timed. The only thing that would have beaten that was like a bolt of lightning or something.
Yeah. So we're gonna do a couple of horror films that we grew up with. We haven't
like a horror double bill, if you will.
Yeah, we haven't really touched horror yet. So I was thinking, what horror would I do? What film actually made me? Well, still sticks with me now, and I can only think of one film. And it was released the same year as Masters of the Universe, 1987. I watched it probably 1992 when I shouldn't have. So I was 9. Mm-hmm. And all I will say, even though it's not part I don't remember him saying in this film, but I remember him saying it in the sequel, is "Hail to the King, baby." We are watching Evil Dead 2.
Evil Dead 2, one of the strangest trilogies, certainly in terms of structure, of all time. And a film you can absolutely jump in straight in at number 2 because it's basically a remake of number 1, despite the fact that it's Evil Dead 2.
That's exactly right. The first, we'll get into it next week properly, but the first 5 minutes of this film remake the entire 80 minutes of the first film, and then it just carries on.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. But I literally... It's such a great choice. Evil Dead 2 is such an amazing film. I'm a massive fan of horror, and it was bizarre because obviously I already have my pick lined up for next week, but we'll let you know that 7 days time, as it were. But it's amazing that I didn't think of Evil Dead. But as soon as you said Evil Dead 2, I was like, of course Evil Dead 2. Why wouldn't we do Evil Dead 2? So, yeah, this one, great choice. I think it's going to be so much fun discussing this. And I honestly can't wait to rewatch this. Because as much as I love it, I don't think I've seen it for over a decade. So I think this is going to be a really good one.
It's been a while for me as well. I think I've seen Army of Darkness, which you can't class as a horror film, more than I've seen Evil Dead 2. But Evil Dead 2 is...
No, Evil Dead 2 is my joint.
Yeah, and
that's my out of the 3, it was always Evil Dead 2 for me.
And it's the film that's given us the classic Ash, the chainsaw for a hand, the blue shirt, like that. So
I like Army of Darkness fine, but when I think of Ash, it's all Evil Dead 2. It's all Evil Dead 2. So dude, great choice. It should be super fun. It's the first part of our kind of horror double bill over the next couple of weeks. So please, if you get a chance, rewatch the film and join us next week for Evil Dead 2. But as always, thanks for sticking with us. This has been Masters of the Universe, and dude, I mean, it's been great fun, man. So join us again next week, man. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Good journey.
Good journey. Bye-bye. Oh, yeah, and before I forget, because I always forget, here's Rob telling you where you can actually find us.
Yeah, so we're currently on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under Hey You Guys 80s or at Hey You Guys 80s. And we're also on email at heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any emails, any recommendations, or any reviews you have. But whilst we're on about that, wherever you get your podcasts, please also smash the subscribe button. Yes, I said smash.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Leave us a review and leave us some 5-star ratings as well. But make sure they're 5-star ratings.
Yeah. We're not interested in 1 star, 5-star. If it's not going to be 5-star, don't go smashing anything. Just leave your opinion to yourself. 5-star ratings only. But if you could do that, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you next week.
Hey, you